Alright, Trial Mob, welcome back to another TBG Trial by Gaming's feature. We're going over the Joytoy Warhammer Tempestus Scions. So this is one of the 5 that you can get that are basically from the non-elite team. I guess you could call it, these are more so the grunts, though they're obviously still very highly well trained and well equipped, as you can tell. So we're going to go over this, we're going to break it down, and we're going to see, is this something that you should buy immediately? Now, from what you can just immediately tell from the figures, they're really good looking. Joytoy, even when it has some more, let's say, janky articulation at times and some engineering decisions that I don't always agree with, it's hard to not agree with just the general design cues that they use. Obviously, this is based on a previous model that they're doing their molding on, but as you can tell, it looks like the miniature but just blown up. This is really good work. Kudos to them for being able to pull this off. I have a sweet spot for the Tempestus Scion, so to see them absolutely knock it out of the park with these guys means a lot. And at the end of the day, this is a exercise in Joytoy proving to everybody else that they can make a very competent, very good, very well-rounded figure from the Joytoy series that tends to, or should I say from the Joytoy Warhammer series, that tends to, I think, do all the things that we've been expecting them to do. This is coming off hot off the heels of the Tau Fire Warriors that I said were so good. Well, those are now second place because this is first. Now, when it comes to the box presentation, we've seen this before. Good presentation overall using the actual figure itself in all the promotional shots. We get a nice promotional shot in the front, Tempestus Scions and everything else around the sides, and of course a good looking rear shot that tells us basically everything that the figure comes with, the breakdown, and of course some of the photography looking pretty nice. While the box does not open like some of the other Joytoy figures that we sometimes get, and showing basically a glass window, if you're a closed box collector, this is still going to look really good on the shelf, considering you still get a nice photo of the Joytoy Tempestus Scion on it, and of course you get to see a lot of the detail of it without needing to pull it out of the case. Now obviously here we're finally pulled out, and here is the Tempestus Scion himself, looking just incredible. They really knocked it out of the park here. I think Joytoy obviously has a little bit of freedom when it comes to how they're going to do the scale, the bulk, the size, and I don't need to put him next to a Krieg for you to tell that this guy is still definitely bigger than one of the Krieg soldiers, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. A few people were talking about kind of the reasons why he might be bigger, and these are supposed to be like the cream of the crop in terms of human reinforcements. So these guys are all the guys who are probably over 6 foot tall, really large build. These are like the Vikings, they're going to be very big soldiers. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the overall aesthetic, the bulk, the look. They're the golds that we're seeing here, it looks very much so Space Marine-esque. And then if we take it a step further, it looks very royal, as it's supposed to be. And so I appreciate a lot of the looks we get here. The green and everything that's supposed to be basically electric. The green of the eyes, the green of the sensor on the left. The skull that's well painted down the center of the chest. The gold is very reflective, as you can tell. So it's a very regal, very nice look. I really appreciate these blue and golds. They knocked it out of the park overall with the general design. And then it also is supposed to look retro in the sense of that looks like if you didn't have all those glowing parts and the grenades and you just gave me this guy as it was, I might say, oh wow, that must be from Age of Sigmar, because that's how much these guys resemble like knights or cavalry. It's not until you see everything else that you realize, oh, this is 40k. And I appreciate that a lot about the Tempestus Scion specifically. It adds to the regal look, and it's just a really nice aesthetic overall. There's some other aesthetics we're going to get into in terms of, I think, quality of life improvements that we're getting from Joytoy here. So we'll go ahead and break that down after we go into the accessories. So accessories, we do get a few stuff here. A stand, which I do believe this is the first time we're getting one that's this style, because I know we got it with Commander Shadowsun. And then of course the backpack and gun combo with 4 different hands, including fisted hands, and then kind of actiony display hands. The gun itself just looks great, fits in his hands perfectly. He's able to aim it down sight. There's a lot going on here. The grenades, the canteen, the aesthetic goes all together really, really well, and it matches itself to a point that I think is very useful. And of course, the stand allows for a lot of different things that you can do to show off some of the new articulation. So obviously, let's go ahead and get into articulation. So when it comes to articulation, they have done an incredible job here. The head can look up basically all the way up to the sky, can look all the way down at a downed enemy, and this is without moving the body at all. It can do a full 360 all the way around. Now, the only thing I don't like is that the head seems to be on a really long peg, so it looks a little weird, but not really necessarily a problem. The armor up top doesn't seem to get in the way of the body too much. It can lean a little bit forward, a little bit back, left to right pretty well, and then swivels kind of like side to side, as you can tell. They're kind of like pivots, surprisingly far. Now that's with the legs also starting to bend down a little bit, but like that's just to prove to you that you can get him into poses where he's running forward or tumbling over or something, and it's not going to be much of an issue. Now the arms is where it gets a little tricky. You kind of can get him out to a full T-pose, but you can get him out far enough. I would say that you would probably end up breaking those straps on the upper biceps in order to get higher than that. So I would not recommend that at all. But you can get 90 degrees at the elbows, and the elbow pieces can move out of the way so that you can get better articulation than I think I showed here. I'll try to touch base on that a little bit later, but of course you can get to about 90, swivel it left and right. The hands are on that ball peg, which allows you to do basically anything, any kind of movement you want, be it gun grip or push-up grip. The other hand does the same. The legs come up to basically 90 degrees. They do a little bit of that kind of Star Wars Black Series where you have to line it up in order to get it up a little bit higher, but as you can tell, that's solidly 90 degrees even with everything above it, which is just incredible. The splits go really far, man. You're not going to need more than that. These guys are not gymnastics. They're not going to do that. Upper thigh swivel, and then double jointed knees at the bottom that come with basically this, I want to say this like Metacom style of joint in there that kind of blocks the parts that would normally look where you could see the joint, and it makes it look so much prettier from the front. From the back, obviously, no need for it, but from the front at least, you get a lot of that. Okay. Good ankle pivots and swivels. Okay, so now that we are in this next part, we're going to go ahead and break down size comparisons. I know that for a lot of you guys, this is very important, so let's go ahead and get into it. So starting off with some other Warhammer Joytoy stuff, we have the Sisters of Battle. Okay, so this one right here, I just recently got. I really like the Sisters. I think that they are the Adeptus Sororitas is really goddamn cool. Now they're not perfect figures, and I am gonna have to do a review on this later, of course, to touch base on that. But as you can tell, in terms of size, they are supposed to be about 6 foot tall, and technically so are these Scions as well. So these match up really nicely, and even though they are about the same height, the Scions are definitely a thicker bunch. Now bringing in our Xenos characters, here we end up with the Tau Fire Warriors, and this is perfect, man. Listen, the Tau are supposed to be the slightest bit shorter on average than their human counterparts. So if the Scion and our sister here are supposed to be 6 foot even, give or take, it's easy to think that these guys are roughly, without their helmets, close to 5'7", 5'8", and I do believe that's very accurate. So they knocked it out of the park in terms of scale, so I really appreciate that. Now, of course, I had to bring in a Space Marine because I need to show you guys this, and these guys being as big as they are definitely make the Space Marines look really small in comparison. This could technically still work, I'm sure. They are technically a whole, I wouldn't even say a whole head taller, because the Scion's head comes up to about the Vox voice box machine that's in front of their mouth, so it's hard for me to say here whether or not the Scion is too big, but the Space Marine is definitely too small. And then of course when we back out and we bring out Commander Shadowsun here, that's really where the problems start to multiply for me. The Space Marines should not look this tiny compared to Commander Shadowsun. The head, the body, just everything in general, these guys should be maybe not exactly as tall as that, but they should definitely be in the realm of not looking this puny next to both of these guys. So hopefully we do get some more uprated sizes in the future. Again, I'm trying to work on that with somebody right now. My apologies for taking so long on that. Now, this is something that I know a lot of you guys are going to take a look at, but how does the best of the best from Joytoy Warhammer stack up against what we have going on right now from Joytoy Infinity? And in terms of overall size, I think this works pretty well. They look to be about the same size in terms of arms, legs, and I would even say overall head size and helmet and all that. So I feel like these look really nice. I definitely think if you guys are gonna like this Warhammer stuff, this Infinity stuff is hot on their heels. And this is more so, they're more normal looking figures. Infinity's got a lot of stuff coming that's gonna be out of this world. But again, I think this is a good size comparison. And then here we have another one of the Infinities. This right here is the Veteran. The first one was a Tank Hunter. This one is, I believe, just they're known as the I forget what these guys are basically the Russian military. I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys in hopes of trying to make sure I'm being transparent. I really thought that the guy on the right was going to be my favorite, but to be honest, the guy on the left is. I'll tell you guys about that in the review. They're still awesome figures, and I 100% think that you guys should go after it. But again, Joytoy is starting all over with a new IP, and sometimes there's going to be little things here and there that aren't going to necessarily make sense in terms of engineering. But again, in terms of overall size, this does look great. I really like what they have going on here. Now, of course, in keeping with the Ariadnes, here we have the Desert Patrol. I forget the exact name of these guys, but you know what I'm talking about. And as you can tell, it's about the same size, about the same everything. Again, the uniformity here looks good. I think this new era of Joytoy is going to be pretty badass, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this stuff a lot. And now going back to some of Joytoy's older stuff, here we have one of the US Navy SEALs with basically a different head that I put onto him from another Joytoy figure. And as you can tell, the scale here is definitely different. Height might be fairly close, but everything else is definitely a bit different. The size of the arms, size of the legs, just the overall dimensions, it's very, very different here. This is basically like Acid Rain compared to Joytoy. And then to follow that up, we also have one of the Freedom Militia soldiers. And actually, this guy is, I think, the slightest bit taller than the US Navy SEAL, but not really too much. But as you can tell, still looks perfectly fine. It's funny how much larger the Scions are in terms of their overall body, the weapons, everything. I mean, it's a very, very different figure overall. So if you're trying to play with them together, not going to be a problem in photography, but just in the way they look, they obviously don't look like they belong to the same universe in the slightest bit. But that's something that I appreciate. And then with Acid Rain, as you can tell, here we have Gauntlet, and Gauntlet is, I want to say, roughly the same size, like height-wise, to the Scion. Girth and everything else is about the same. Thickness is about the same. Nah, I'm lying. The Scion is still, I think, overall thicker, but I still think that this looks more in line, right? Because Acid Rain has that sort of cyborgy, rustic-y kind of look that is reminiscent of, I think, a lot of different aspects of Warhammer. So again, I like what they have going on here. Now, I used Fresh Retro last time in order to prove a point, and I think the point still stands here. The size of the smaller figure to the left of the Scion should honestly have been what all the characters' sizes are in terms of human characters, non-super large characters, which would have made them maybe in line with what we already knew as the size of like the US Navy SEAL characters, right? So just slightly smaller, not even too much, but slightly smaller buck overall. And to the right is the perfect size for what the Space Marines could have been. Even at the current size of the Scion, I would still say that the larger cyborg character to the right is honestly perfect overall for me. Now, moving into something a little bit different, Robot Spirit Signs, we have the Kabuto, and this thing is massive. Again, this is not normal for Robot Spirit stuff, I would say, but it's a great figure. I will do a review on it eventually. It's kind of giving me Crevo vibes, but I 100% think that you need to run out and buy these, especially while they're still running very cheap. And then keeping in line with the Robot Spirits, we have the Goof Custom, and as you can tell, definitely a lot smaller. The Gundam stuff tends to be pretty tiny in comparison to a lot of the other lines here. Like again, like the Kabuto is just huge. But if you even take a look at that, I should have, and maybe in the future I will, remove the head for a second and put a Space Marine head on it. I think you guys are going to agree that that would be like, again, the perfect height for a Space Marine compared to everybody else, you know, but that's just what I'm thinking. And then, of course, to just kind of branch out, here we have Balrog on the left, absolutely massive, that's not even going to work for you. And then we have Buzz Lightyear on the right. Again, you know, obviously it's not going to work, but it's still fun to take a look at. Now, I wanted to top it off with one last figure. This right here is the Yellow Jacket Captain. Tends to be a more armorized figure that looks a little bit larger. Definitely has an overall good look to it. But again, this is just to give you one last look at a size comparison with Acid Rain figures. So when it comes to playability, how good is this Scion figure? It's top notch. I think it's the best that we've gotten from Joytoy in terms of the human factions. I would say that this is very, very similar to what we get with the Tau, but I would say that this even still takes it up another notch. Some of the quality of life improvements, some of the things that you can do with this figure, you know, like the fact that the head itself has way more range than, let's say, what the Taus came with, which the Taus weren't necessarily bad, but this is better. The armor itself looks really nice and well done. Quality is pretty high. You can get this guy into the aim down pose. You can get this guy into a kneeling pose. Those covers that it has in the knee pads allows it to make it look a bit more flush, the way, like, let's say a Figma joint might look. So there's a lot going on here that I really, really appreciate with what they've done here to give us just an overall better product than anything that we've gotten, I think, overall before. Now, I know that there's other figures that have come out, like the Necrons, which I just bought one, that sister that I have, which is also really cool but isn't perfect. As far as I can tell, this is the #1 figure that Joytoy has made that is from their Warhammer line. That overall, I think anyone who decides to buy one is going to walk away fairly impressed. That's not to say that this is your favorite design. Maybe you have another design that you like more. Perfectly fine. I get it. But I think that once you get your hands on this, you're going to go, Joytoy really can get it right. From the sizing to the scaling to, you know, the again, being able to aim down sight, getting to different poses, the articulation, the quality. I mean, look at this guy. He can look up pretty far. It doesn't necessarily mean you can put him in a prone position per se because of the rubber on the side, but I still think that there's so much that comes with this figure that is going to make you realize just how poor of a job they did with the Kriegs. I really hope, Joytoy, if you guys are watching, you guys need to remake the Kriegs using a lot of the philosophies that you guys used here with the Scion, because this Scion is just that well done that I think that this is kind of the pinnacle of what we're going to get from Joytoy, and hopefully how they're going to use some of the same things moving forward with things like their Infinity line and their other lines moving forward. And of course, I do kind of like this stand as it allows you to extrapolate a lot of what you want from this character: running poses, falling down poses, getting knocked back poses, whatever it is, you're able to do it with this character. So I highly appreciate what Joytoy's been able to do here, and I'm hoping that ultimately they're able to get it all together. Alright, Trial Mob, so there you have it. That's the entire review. This is probably one of the best figures that we have gotten from Warhammer Joytoy. I think that anything that we get moving forward in terms of this overall buck is just going to be really, really good. So if you're trying to army build them, there's at least 10 different versions that you're able to get. 5 from the Scions, and then 5 from basically like their command group. They're all going to be really good. They're all going to articulate well. They're all going to stand well. Quality seems to be very high. So I highly recommend you at least purchase one. I think that as of the time of this review, the Prime deals now have these guys at like $10 off, matching if not beating certain sites overseas, and obviously Amazon's going to be able to get it to you very, very quickly. So again, I highly recommend take your chance on one of these. I think you're not going to feel like you got shafted the way you might have with the Kriegs. I think in many ways this is Warhammer's, or should I say Joytoy's, apology to us by making such a stellar figure and going, hey, believe in us, trust in us, we can do it, we are getting better. So take a chance on these guys. I don't think you're going to be let down, and if this is as good as this is, I cannot wait for the other human characters that we're going to be getting in the future. But there you guys have it. Let me know what you guys thought. Let me know if you guys are going to buy this. Please like, please comment, please subscribe, and I have more things coming up in the future. But until then, I will see you guys on the next feature. Deuces.